Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the slightly absurd, thoroughly feathered, and unexpectedly suspenseful world of Victorian mailmen and their nemesis geese. You are about to step into a soggy, fog-choked alley in 19th century London, wearing shoes that barely qualify as waterproof and a uniform that itches in places you didn't know existed. The street lamps flicker like they're contemplating quitting. You take a breath of smoky city air, and then you hear it. That unmistakable hiss somewhere between a bicycle tire deflating and a demon about to pounce. You probably won't survive this postal shift, but let's pretend you will. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now down in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along Fleet Street, the bundle of letters in your satchel bumping against your hip like a metronome of doom. The gaslight glow barely reaches past your knees. The fog so thick you can smell it, half coal, half misery. You're not alone. Somewhere to your left there's a rustle. A feathered rustle. Goose. You freeze. Mailmen in Victorian Britain didn't fear many things. They were trained to ignore barking dogs, the occasional petty thief, even the frequent drunken outburst from an annoyed shopkeeper. But geese? That was different. These weren't farmyard fluffballs. These were borderline velociraptors with wings and a vendetta against hats. They're not even being quiet about it. From behind a warped garden fence, a squadron of them announces your presence to the entire block. You swear one of them squints at you with tactical intent, and then it lunges. There's a reason postal workers carried umbrellas even on sunny days. Not just for the weather, but for beak blocking. Your reflexes kick in. You swing the umbrella low, not to hit, no, violence never solves anything, but to provide a temporary barrier between your kneecaps and a furious waterfowl. The goose bounces off with a dramatic honk and flaps back behind its picket fence, satisfied that it's defended Her Majesty's territory once again. You sigh and keep walking. Victorian mailmen were expected to deliver post multiple times a day, up to 12 deliveries during the holiday season in dense urban centers like London. This meant constant exposure to the elements, and the elements included animals. Geese, it turns out, were shockingly common as urban sentries, especially in poorer or working-class neighborhoods where a watchdog might be too expensive or already in the stew pot. And what a system geese made! They're territorial, loud, and unlike dogs, virtually immune to bribery. Wave a pork pie at a mutt, and you're best friends. Try the same with a goose. You've only angered it more. You arrive at number 27, slide a folded envelope through the slot, and almost lose a finger to a sudden snap. Another goose, this one indoors apparently. Fantastic. Historians still argue whether geese were genuinely more effective than dogs at home defense, or if this was just a trend driven by Victorian frugality and fashion. Either way, you're beginning to suspect it was a conspiracy. You move on, stepping around a puddle that may or may not have been a puddle. A clatter above makes you glance up, just laundry. Or a ghost. Hard to tell in this light. You remember stories shared by older postal clerks at the depot? One swore he'd seen a goose in Islington that actually waited for the mailman to turn his back before launching a sneak attack. Another claimed a goose had followed him home like some cursed shadow, honking outside his boarding house until he moved to a different district. No one ever believed the man about the goose in a top hat, though. That one may have been gin-related. You adjust your satchel, now a little lighter, and steel yourself. The next alley is worse. The fog is thicker, the cobblestones slicker, and the honking, the closer. At least, you're getting your steps in. A typical postman in this era walked between 10 and 20 miles a day, often over multiple shifts. And you're expected to be presentable the whole time, pressed. Polished, polite, and preferably not bleeding from goose wounds. The clanging of a distant church bell tells you it's nearly 5 a.m. Still 2 hours of deliveries before your break. But the city's slowly stirring. A baker opens his shop giving you a sympathetic nod. You nod back trying not to limp. The geese here are trained to aim for the left calf. Somehow they know. In the postal office, they keep a log of odd incidents. It's mostly filled with dogs, yes, but geese are a growing category. Bitten on wrist while retrieving letter 1 entry reads, "Lost cap to territorial goose," says another. "Refused to enter garden due to feathered threat" is now shorthand for "I value my face." You shuffle up a narrow staircase and tuck a postcard under a dusty doormat. A honk echoes from somewhere below, and you instinctively clutch the railing tighter. How many of them are out there? Do they coordinate? Is there a goose telegram service reporting your route in advance? A sudden image crosses your mind. Tiny feathered operatives tapping out messages with their bills, mailman on Hanover Street. Engage. You shake it off. This is just fatigue. Or early onset goose paranoia. You finish the last house on this street and finally cut through a quiet square toward the depot. A bench waits under a half-dead tree, and you collapse onto it thankful for one peaceful moment. In the distance, a goose honks, but this time it sounds almost approving. You're barely off the bench when you hear it again. That low, guttural honk, the kind that starts in the belly of the beast and vibrates up through its beak with the intensity of a war cry. You don't even flinch this time. You're too tired, too numb. You've accepted that somewhere in this courtyard behind one of these iron fences or beneath a cart half loaded with cabbages is a goose. Waiting, watching, judging. You trudge on wondering why geese? Why not chickens or turkeys or, heaven forbid, cats? But Victorian England had its own logic, not always good logic, but logic nonetheless. And in this particular niche of history, geese weren't just birds, they were sentinels. In the 1800s, especially in cities like London, Birmingham, and Liverpool, geese were regarded as reliable security animals. They're loud, mean, and utterly indifferent to human rank or etiquette. Dogs can be trained. Geese. They simply decide. And heaven help you if they decide you're suspicious. In a time before burglar alarms, motion sensor lights, or even consistent street patrols, people relied on noise. And geese deliver noise in spades. A single startled goose can wake the dead, alert the neighbors, and shame a burglar into early retirement. Their shrieks cut through brick and fog like a knife through pudding. You pause outside a modest brick terrace and note the small brass sign, "Beware of Goose." No plural, just one. As if that's all it takes. The gate creaks open. You tread lightly, and then you see it. At the far end of the walkway next to a ceramic garden gnome whose face has seen things it waits. White feathers, orange feet, eyes like tiny honking portals to chaos. You freeze. Not out of fear but strategy. They can sense motion. Or at least you believe they can. No one's actually proven this, but anecdotal evidence is pretty overwhelming. Plus, Mrs. Langley swears her goose knows the difference between friend and foe. This might be the same goose. You reach into your satchel and produce your first line of defense, a stale crust of bread. Not exactly regulation, but no one in the depot asked too many questions when they saw mailmen pocketing breakfast leftovers. They knew. You toss it gently. The goose watches it fall unimpressed. Its head swivels back to you with an almost exaggerated slowness. Then it honks once, just once, as if to say, "Nice try." Back in the depot break room, there's an old saying stenciled on the wall in fading red ink. A barking dog bites once. A goose. Until satisfied. Probably a joke. Probably. The goose charges. You backpedal with as much dignity as you can muster, cursing the lack of boot grip. The cobblestones aren't helping. Neither is the fog. You flail with your umbrella, not in panic, but in self-respect. There are windows. Someone might be watching. Historians still argue whether Victorian families genuinely believed geese were superior to watchdogs, you mutter to yourself, dodging the orange missile. Or whether they just liked the goose meat on holidays. The goose halts just at the edge of the path, satisfied that its territory is unviolated. You, on the other hand, are not. Your sock is damp, your fingers are numb, and your dignity lies somewhere behind you next to the garden gnome. Still, mission accomplished. The letter is posted. The empire lives on. The rest of the street isn't much kinder. You begin to notice a pattern. The homes with dogs. A bark a tail, wag, sometimes even a sad little face pressed against the window pane. But homes with geese complete anarchy. One even has a trio waddling in formation like feathered guards doing perimeter checks. You suspect they were military ones. You reach a corner house with ivy choking its stone walls and see a curious contraption, a miniature drawbridge rigged with string and bells. Next to it, a goose. No fence, no leash. Just the bird, the bridge, and a plaque, private property protected by Goose since 1847. You can't decide whether you admire the commitment or fear it. You tiptoe past only to be startled by a sudden hiss from the shrubbery. A second goose. Of course, there's a second goose. They work in pairs. You make a run for it while a brisk hobble. Your umbrella flails again, more out of instinct than effect. The goose nips at your heel but doesn't pursue. They've won this battle with minimal effort. You think back to a curious tidbit you overheard once at the British Library. Apparently, in some rural areas, geese were even trained loosely to walk perimeter circuits like beaked soldiers. Whether this was efficient or merely theatrical is still debated in historical circles, but the records are their property ledgers referencing goose patrol expenses. Victorian priorities, everyone. You finally reach a small newsagent shop. You hand off a stack of trade bulletins, receiving a sympathetic grunt from the clerk. He jerks his head toward a goose-shaped weather vane on the roof. Had one once, he mutters. Used to stand on the counter, bit the landlord. Twice. You nod solemnly. Brotherhood of the Bitten. In your satchel, you find a rare treat. A letter addressed to an address without a yard. Apartment buildings are rare in this part of town, but when you find one, it's like discovering fire. You climb the stairs, relishing every goose-free step, and slip the envelope into a wooden box labeled Dr. H. Fennelbird's Unwelcome, a man after your own heart. You descend shoulders slightly lighter and decide to take the long route back to the main street. It's quieter here, just the slow groan of a milk cart somewhere in the distance and the rhythmic slap of your boots against stone. You finally breathe deeply, freely. The street ahead is straight, clear, and goose-free for about 30 steps. Then from a bush to your right there's a rustle, a honk, and a white blur launches from the shadows like a furious feathered cannonball. Of course, your umbrella takes the brunt of the impact. The goose bounces off with an almost indignant flap as if personally offended by your preparedness. You stagger, but don't fall. That's something. The umbrella rattles in your hand like a fencing foil that's seen better days, and honestly, you wish you'd picked the sturdier one from the rack back at the depot. You make a mental note to oil the hinge, again. This time the goose doesn't press the attack. Maybe it's out of breath. Maybe it respects your grit, or maybe it's just not a morning goose. Either way, you take the opportunity to retreat fast, but not before filing this encounter away under reasons I deserve a raise. It's not even 6:30 a.m., and you've already been ambushed twice. And the day's only just begun. Victorian mailmen were in every sense endurance athletes. You weren't hired unless you were able-bodied, literate, and could walk upwards of 20 miles a day. Seriously. In some London districts, especially the sprawling ones like Hackney or Islington, postmen covered ground that would make marathon runners look like they'd taken the scenic route. One record from 1881 describes a route that included 1,780 door-to-door deliveries on foot. That's a lot of doors, and potentially a lot of geese. You glance at your route sheet. Today's path loops through one of the older neighborhoods full of narrow lanes, uneven paving, and a suspicious abundance of low hedges perfect for concealing feathered ambushers. You roll your shoulders and press on. You begin to pace yourself. There's a rhythm to it now. Step scan for beaks deliver retreat. Repeat. It's absurd, and yet somehow it's your life. At the next home, the garden gate is tied shut with a string. A crude drawing is pinned beside it, a sketch of a goose with devil horns and sharp teeth. It's titled Mildred. You wonder if Mildred's exaggeration or honest portraiture. There's no sign of the beast at first. You approach with caution. Your hand finds the string on the gate, and as you fumble with the knot, a low thump sounds behind the hedge. You freeze. The bush shudders ominously. And then, with the screeching fury of a kettle on full boil, Mildred bursts forth. You don't wait for phase 2. You launch the letter over the gate like a paper frisbee and stumble backwards, slipping slightly on a patch of moss. Mildred patrols the gate like a prison warden until you're safely 2 houses away. You mutter should have thrown in a biscuit and remind yourself not all heroes wear capes, some carry umbrellas and stale snacks. And still, no matter the danger, you keep moving. Because the Victorian post wasn't just important, it was sacred. The mail service was one of the empire's great prides. It represented order, civilization, and the idea that even in fog fire or foul fury, the letter must go through. In fact, most homes expected not 1 but 2 deliveries a day. Some wealthy clients requested 3. The Royal Mail prided itself on this regularity, which meant no excuses, no "a goose chased me down the block" exemptions, no sympathy leave for poultry trauma. You pass another postman across the street, Reginald. You nod at him. He's got a bandage around his shin and a haunted look in his eyes. He raises his hat in silent solidarity and keeps moving. His gait says it all, the geese got him too. You chuckle quietly, not unkindly, just knowingly. You reach a bakery and inhale the smell of warm bread, soothed momentarily by the scent of something that isn't damp wool or animal aggression. The baker waves. You nod. He hands you a roll without asking. It's your goose tax. Everyone knows it. Further down the lane, a woman with 3 children stands in front of her cottage. She smiles and says cheerfully, "Careful, Ethel's hiding in the back hedge." You blink. Ethel, our goose. She doesn't like strangers or hats. You consider removing your cap but decide against it. Baldness is not worth the gamble. You take the path at a brisk pace, watching every shrub like it might explode. The woman's youngest child counts down ominously. 3, 2, 1. Sure enough, a white blur rockets from the hedge. You spin, launch the letter with sniper precision, and sprint. Behind you, the goose flaps furiously but doesn't give chase. Victory. Sort of. You slow down. Once you reach the main avenue, again lungs burning. The cobblestones beneath you stretch wide here, the space too open for geese to hide easily. You breathe, at least for now. Mainstream history books rarely dwell on the ridiculous bits. The Royal Mail's reputation is often told in terms of efficiency, innovation, and order. Pneumatic tubes, uniforms, international treaties. But the day-to-day was filled with mud, sweat, and feathers. And jokes. Always jokes. At the pub near the depot, someone's pinned up a parody route map. It shows the city not by street names, but by goose names and associated risk. Stanley hostile but predictable. Greta chases bikes. Jeffrey steals hats. It's not accurate, but it's not inaccurate either. You think about asking the postmaster general for hazard pay, but that would require explaining the goose situation, and explaining it seriously is impossible. Historians still argue whether the dangers of mail delivery were underreported due to the inherently absurd nature of the threats you say aloud to no one in particular. A chimney sweep nearby glances at you like you've lost it. Maybe you have. Your last delivery for this block is an old manor house with a stone gargoyle and a garden straight out of a penny dreadful. The gate's ajar. You step through cautiously, no geese in sight, but you don't let your guard down. That's how they get you. You reach the front door. No bell, just a knocker shaped like a lion's head. You place the envelope on the mat and turn. You meet eyes with the goose on the path behind you. How long has it been watching? You bow your head slightly, acknowledging its silent disapproval, and walk away slowly, carefully, but without panic. You have become postal. By now, your satchel feels lighter, your legs heavier, and your nerves a frayed collection of fibers held together by pure spite. The sun is finally rising, a weak suggestion of warmth that filters through chimney haze and illuminates the damp cobblestones like polished pewter. The fog thins slightly, and for a glorious moment it seems like the geese have retreated. That illusion lasts about 8 steps. You turn onto Pinchbeck Row, a narrow alley where the cobblestones grow mossy and the windows peer down like suspicious relatives. Here, the danger isn't the terrain, it's the fashion. More precisely, your fashion. Your uniform. The Victorian postman's uniform, while iconic, wasn't built with survival in mind. It's all stiff wool, thick seams, and brass buttons that somehow find new ways to dig into your ribs with each step. The navy blue jacket with its red piping looks sharp in portraits, but under pressure it becomes a liability. Especially when that pressure includes fast-moving waterfowl. You scratch your collar absent-mindedly. It's starched to the point of cruelty. And the cap don't even start. It's less a hat and more a goose-targeting bullseye. With brass. It gets worse in summer when the uniform bakes you like a Victorian pudding. But even in the cooler months you sweat partially from exertion, mostly from adrenaline. Mailmen weren't issued alternate outfits for goose attacks, or mud, or minor blood loss. The alley grows narrower. A washing line sagging from last night's rain droops just low enough to smack your forehead. A sock clings to your cap. You don't bother removing it. It might offer some protection. You remember a colleague, Wallace, who tried altering his uniform for mobility. Remove the brass buttons, hem the coat shorter. The supervisor caught him before his first goose did. "Uniformity is discipline," the man barked. "This isn't a costume parade." Wallace nodded, then got bitten in the thigh the next day by a goose named Susan. You reach the end of the alley and cross into a yard that seems goose-free. But you know better. You've learned to scan first for movement, then for feathers, then for droppings. Never dismiss the droppings. They tell a story. Sure enough, to the left, next to a toppled watering can, you spot a fluffed pile of menace. Sleeping, maybe, or pretending. You step lightly, very lightly, but the ground beneath you betrays everything, a crunch of gravel sharp and clear. The goose stirs. You whisper, "Nope," and pivot immediately, tucking the letter under a flower pot like a very British covert operative. You're nearly out of the yard when the honking starts. You don't look back. Dignity is a luxury you shed 3 houses ago. The uniform absorbs mud like it was designed for camouflage. You hope someone finds that poetic. You press forward to a wealthier part of the district. Larger homes, proper sidewalks, manicured hedges. Here the geese are different. Less street smart, perhaps, but more entitled. They walk like they own the property taxes. You step into one garden and immediately regret it, Anne. The stone path is spotless, the hedges trimmed to military precision, and the goose monumental. It stands on the porch, wings tucked, gaze fixed on you like a bouncer who doesn't believe your name is on the list. This is not a random goose. This is a family heirloom. Its white feathers are almost luminous. Its beak gleams faintly. It doesn't move, doesn't blink, just watches, like a portrait. A terrifying, judgmental portrait. You reach for the letter slowly, and the brass buttons on your sleeve glint in the morning light. Big mistake. The goose takes it as a challenge. It hisses like a leaking kettle and starts forward, not at a run, no, but with a steady, deliberate march. It's the confidence that gets you. You don't run. Not this time. Instead, you extend the letter like a peace-offering nod respectfully and place it gently on the step. The goose pauses. You step back 2 paces. It looks at the envelope, then at you, then back again. The wind shifts. A flower petal flutters down. Finally, the goose honks once quietly and turns away. You exhale like you've just disarmed a bomb. Historians still argue whether some geese in aristocratic homes were trained specifically to recognize postmen by scent or silhouette. There's no conclusive proof, but many personal accounts from the 1870s speak of the Countess's goose that never attacked the Morning Post, but routinely chased off door-to-door salesmen. Whether it was trained or simply biased, no one knows. You continue your deliveries now, avoiding eye contact with all poultry-shaped statuary just in case. The uniform soaks up dew and dog fur in equal measure. You feel like a Victorian sponge. Eventually, you pass a group of schoolchildren walking to class. One of them points and whispers, "He's got a goose scratch." You look down. Sure enough, your left cuff is torn and faintly bloodied. You nod solemnly. A badge of honor. They salute you. This is the strange prestige of your profession. Outsiders scoff at the idea of fearsome birds. But in this city, among the postmen, the milk boys, and the coalmen, the tale of the goose-scarred mailman is legend. At the next depot break, someone will ask what street you got it on. They'll nod. Respect. It's nearly time for your shift change, but you've got 2 more houses, both on Primrose Crescent. You remember that street, or rather you remember the pain. You approach cautiously. The first house has a note pinned to the gate: delivery box installed. No need to enter garden. Do not enter garden. You take the win. The delivery box is pristine, attached to the fence like a tiny chapel of mercy. You drop the envelope inside, pat the lid, and whisper a thank you. The final house is where your shin met beak. 3 weeks ago. You still bear the bruise. It's faint now, yellow-green like old wallpaper. You steel yourself, gripping your satchel tighter. You step onto the path. There's no goose in sight, but there's something worse: an egg. Just sitting there, pale, fragile, threatening. You stare at it for a long moment, considering your options. Leave the letter near it. Risk insulting the maternal instincts of a hidden assassin. Tuck it under the windowsill. But then it might blow away. You opt for the fence post, tall solid away from both nest and entry. As you step back, you hear it. The soft flap of wings behind the shed. A shadow shifts. You do not wait. You walk quickly, but not fearfully. The egg stays behind. So do you, mostly intact. The uniform, though slightly worse for wear. One button is gone, a tear by the hem. But you survived. And that's enough. The button's gone, sure, but your pride's mostly intact, and frankly, buttons are optional when your main concern is evading winged fury. You tighten your satchel, tilt your cap just so, and march down a gravel path with the renewed energy of someone who's either learned absolutely nothing or has reached a state of resigned enlightenment. You've still got deliveries to make, still have homes to visit. And most crucially, you've still got 1 slice of stale bread left. You pat your coat pocket like it's a good luck charm. It crumbles slightly. That's fine, that's good. Crumbs are currency. In this next neighborhood, known casually among postal staff as Peck Alley, you start to rely on improvisation. Your tools aren't issued by the Royal Mail. They're born of necessity. A reinforced umbrella. Extra scraps of crust. A small metal tin full of peppermints you can toss to distract the particularly greedy ones. And a woolen glove stuffed with hay just in case you need to sacrifice a decoy limb. You're a postman. But here you're an inventor. The first house on the block has a new addition: a wire mesh screen across the walkway. Not for security. No, it's to funnel the geese toward the flower beds. There's even a little sign, honk zone, left with a tiny arrow. You admire the effort, then glance right. There she is. The goose is massive, like someone built it out of spare pillows and bad intentions. It spots you instantly, but the mesh keeps her from charging. Instead, she follows you along the edge as you walk, honking rhythmically like some terrible train conductor. You deliver the letter bow slightly and exit without incident. It's the closest thing to grace you've experienced all week. Next up, number 9. You remember number 9. This is where the legend of Sir Gooseberry began. The story told in this depot with hushed reverence goes like this. A postman named Alfred tried to deliver a telegram during a thunderstorm. The goose, an enormous male with a crooked neck and something resembling a monocle marking over his eye, stood his ground in the rain, unbothered by lightning, and bit Alfred directly on the nose, twice. The scar shaped like a comma. The legacy eternal. You pause at the gate. The house is quiet, too quiet. No goose in sight. That's even worse. You crouch slightly, eyes darting. You're not paranoid, you're experienced. There's a difference. You spot movement under a bush. You freeze. It's a squirrel. You breathe. You laugh even. Then you turn, and Sir Gooseberry stands in the walkway like a conjured nightmare. His head tilted, his wings slightly outstretched. You try the crust. You throw it lightly underhand just to the left. The goose blinks, then takes a slow, regal step toward it. Not rushed, not desperate, just decisive. While he's distracted, you slip up the steps, tuck the letter into the brass slot, and turn to leave. Sir Gooseberry is between you and the gate. You try reason. You've had the bread, you whisper. The goose narrows its eyes. Historians still argue whether Victorian postmen developed their own language of goose avoidance, an oral tradition passed between generations filled with calls, whistles, and absurdly polite negotiation. Whether it was codified or pure superstition is unclear, but everyone agrees it involved eye contact and very slow blinking. You begin blinking deliberately gently. The goose mirrors you. For a moment, you are two beings bound by unspoken understanding. And then a dog barks 2 houses down, and Sir Gooseberry spins around in alarm, giving you exactly 4 seconds to vault the fence. You do. Barely. Your trousers catch on a nail, but your soul escapes untouched. You brush yourself off, nod at a curious toddler staring through a window, and move on. The next house is unremarkable. No geese. Just a grumpy cat and a door that creaks when you push the letter through. Bliss. You start to think you're over the worst of it. That's when you arrive at number 14. Yes, half addresses. Only in Britain would someone wedge a dwelling between 2 row houses and call it a number and a half. It's basically a corridor with ambition. You squeeze between the brick walls, breath misting in the air, and glance around. No birds, no feathers. You allow yourself a smile. Then you hear the rustling and the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. You look down. There under the iron staircase, a goose pecks rhythmically at a tin bucket. You don't know what ritual this is, but it feels intentional. You try tossing a peppermint. It rolls. The goose ignores it. You try the glove. You toss it like a spy leaves a fake briefcase. The goose investigates, then bites it. Hard. Good. You're buying time. You deliver the letter, turn to go, and knock over the bucket. The clang echoes like a cannon blast. You don't look back. You run. Out the alley onto the street, past a confused flower vendor who drops his tulips. You reach the corner and don't stop until the geese are a memory and your lungs are protesting the injustice. You collapse on a stoop somewhere near Willow Street, unsure whose house it is but praying they're goose-free. You lean back, letting your head thud gently against the door. The sky has gone properly blue now. Morning has arrived. So has a dull ache in your knees. Somewhere in your coat, you feel the last peppermint. You suck on it like it's victory flavored. Mailmen didn't always talk about this stuff. The goose attacks, the nonsense, the sheer surreal violence of their days. But in the letters, journals, and whispered pub stories, it surfaced. One account dated 1865 speaks of a reign of avian terror on Barrow Lane. Another simply reads, "Lost a button, lost my composure, delivered the letter anyways." That's the job. You get up, wipe your coat, straighten your cap, then step forward, umbrella raised not in defense this time, but like a banner. Because you've still got 10 more houses and only one word in your mind. Prepared. Your boots squeak a little now, less from moisture, more from fatigue. They've soaked up half the neighborhood like a sponge in formal shoes. You squint down a long meandering road shaded by ash trees and peppered with chimney smoke, unsure if that rustle behind the fence is a squirrel, a breeze, or another feathered test of character. But for the moment, it's quiet. Too quiet. You stop at the foot of a street with a name that deserves its own ballad, Bridgeton Terrace. You pause involuntarily, tighten your grip on the umbrella, and glance up at the faded street plaque nailed askew above the gaslight. The sign might as well read, "Abandon all shin bones, ye who enter here." Everyone in the depot talks about Bridgeton. The whisper spreads with every new recruit. They don't just flap there, someone once muttered, staring into a cup of tea like it held the secrets of the universe. They flank. You believe it now. No other street gets talked about like a war front. You knock on the first door, then immediately back away. Not because of movement, because of the silence. That heavy waiting silence. It clings to the hedges like dew, like an ambush. And sure enough, from behind a garden statue shaped like a sad cherub, a goose slinks into view. Yes, slinks. You didn't know they could do that, but this one does. You make no sudden moves. You simply nod, crouch slowly, and set the letter down like you're laying an offering at the altar of a particularly angry feathered deity. The goose stares, honks once, then steps toward the letter and sits on it. Well, that's new. You don't argue, you just leave. At the second house, the postman who covers your route. On alternating Tuesdays, Elias emerges from the alleyway. His uniform is streaked with mud, one button hanging by a thread. He limps. Bridgeton again, you ask? He nods grimly. They've figured out the bell system. One honk gets them out the back gate, two means front assault. Coordinated, like clockwork. You both glance down the street. There behind the iron fence of number 8, you spot not one but 5 geese evenly spaced like a defensive line. They march in tandem, squawking in harmony. One of them, wearing what looks suspiciously like a child's mitten on its head, appears to be the leader. You sigh. We need a new strategy. Elias lifts his satchel. I'm trying sourdough now. They hated rye. You nod as if that's a perfectly rational sentence. Historians still argue whether there was ever an unofficial goose rating board maintained by postal staff tracking neighborhoods by hostility species and average beak-to-skin ratio. While no surviving documents confirm it, the oral tradition remains suspiciously detailed. You continue down the lane, each house providing a new kind of surprise. One yard is lined with garden gnomes, each bearing tiny wooden swords. Goose deterrence. Or a distraction. You're not sure, but the geese walk around them unimpressed. Another home has a ladder suspended horizontally above the gate. A decoy perch. Clever. Ineffective. The goose is under the porch waiting for you like a riddle with feathers. The 6th house on the block is infamous. The depot calls it the honk house. No one knows its real address anymore, just its sounds. You tread carefully through the gate and hear it immediately. The low echoing hoom that sounds less like a bird and more like a foghorn with judgmental opinions. The front door has 3 mail slots, none of them within arm's reach. This is by design. You throw the envelope like a dart. It sticks halfway. Close enough. From behind you, an elderly voice calls, careful with Horatio. He hates sudden movements. You turn. An old woman with white gloves and a parasol stands by the rose trellis. You nod. Understood. Is Horatio the large one? No, dear, she smiles. Horatio is the small one. The large one just follows his lead. You stare. There's a smaller goose, indeed. A runt barely up to your knee pecks softly at your boot. Then honks. 3 times. The large one out of nowhere launches. You retreat without pride, vaulting the garden fence with the agility of a slightly panicked librarian. Behind you, the elder claps politely. They do like their rituals. You regroup outside a corner shop where a few postmen are taking 5. They offer tea and you accept it like a man returned from the front. So one asks Bridgeton, live up to the rumors. You lift your pant leg. A new bruise is forming. Better than expected, you say, sipping the lukewarm brew. The others nod. You're one of them now. Someone pulls out a scrap of paper, crumpled, tea-stained, and partially torn. On it is a crude map of Bridgeton Terrace, labeled not with house numbers but with goose silhouettes. This one here, he says, tapping a faded mark, that's where Percy lives. Don't make eye contact. It's seen as a challenge. Like cats, you ask? No. Like Roman generals. You stifle a laugh, not out of disbelief but out of weary agreement. You glance at the paper again. At the notations, bread-friendly bites anyway. Charges after 4 p.m. Loathes purple coats. One note reads simply, tried to fly. Did not succeed. Very angry. You sip your tea. The longer you're in this job, the more you realize it isn't about mail. It's about survival, about stories, about knowing the difference between a friendly honk and a declaration of war. You finish your break, stand up and stretch. The streak continues. You tuck the map into your coat. Bridgeton Terrace might have won today, but tomorrow you bring bagels. You return to the depot that evening with a limp, a feather stuck to your coat and a dazed expression that screams, "I've seen things." The other postmen greet you with a mix of sympathy and admiration. There are no formal medals here, just nods, grunts, and a shared understanding that you now belong to an elite group, the Goose Touched. You sit at the long pine bench by the window, clutching a chipped mug of tea. The depot creaks around you. A draft slips under the back door. Someone's boiling something that might be soup or punishment. But none of that matters because everyone's gathered around the same thing as scrap-bound ledger marked "Dispatch Oddities and Injuries. Do not remove." It's sacred. You open it to a page titled Goose Incidents Autumn Edition. Scribbled notes cover the margins. November 3rd. Chased into hedge. Lost hat, dignity, small piece of ham. November 8th. Bit through uniform pocket. Mail unharmed. Apple gone. November 10th. Made eye contact. Regret. You flip back further. One page is marked with an inky drawing clearly done during a slow shift of a goose wearing a crown standing atop a mailbox. Caption: Reginald the Ruthless, Queen of Clapham. The jokes make it easier, but the reality, sometimes mailmen fought back. You remember the story of old Mr. Thomas. He's retired now, living somewhere up north near the sea. But back in the 60s, legend says he got tired of being bruised, pecked, and publicly humiliated by the same goose every Wednesday on Ivy Street. So he retaliated, not with violence, with cunning. He began delivering fake letters, decoy envelopes stuffed with breadcrumbs or cold peas. He'd toss one as a diversion and slide the real post into the box during the frenzy. It worked, for a while, until the goose caught on. Historians still argue whether that story is embellished, someone at the depot always adds. But the bit about the peas documented. Another tale floats through the room, this one about coded knocks. Postmen allegedly developed a pattern of taps on garden gates to signal non-threatening, much like Morse code. 3 quick, 1 long, tap, 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 tunk. Some claimed it soothed the geese. Others said it just gave them time to prepare. You stare into your tea. The bottom of the mug reveals the words Royal Post, 1845. The irony isn't lost on you. Nothing about this feels particularly royal, unless you count the geese. You speak up softly. Anyone ever try traps? The room stills. A man you don't recognize, a senior postman with a stoop and a bandage around his forearm, chuckles. "Oh, lad," he says. "You mean the Boxborough incident?" "You don't, but now you do." He leans in, his voice low. Couple of young lads in 72 thought they'd outwit the goose at number 4 Boxborough Crescent. It kept tearing the letters to bits. So they rigged up a basket counterweight pulley, all that meant to gently scoop it up for 5 minutes while they delivered. Did it work? Not exactly. He takes a long sip of tea. They caught the goose all right. Basket closed right on time. Letter slipped through the box beautifully. But then right as they were leaving, another goose they didn't know about appeared. Partner goose. You raise your brows. Turns out they work in pairs sometimes, like crows or crime syndicates. Second goose knocked the pulley loose. Basket dropped. First goose was furious. Chased one lad into the canal. You glance around. No one laughs? This is sacred history. Letter survived, he adds. Uniform didn't. Outside, the sun's nearly gone. The lamps flicker on, one by one, soft halos in the mist. Someone throws another log on the depot stove, and it lets out a weary sigh of smoke. You close the ledger gently. Despite the chaos, the pain, the sheer avian animosity, you feel oddly proud. You're part of something weird, something noble, something no one outside this room really understands. You stand, stretch, and say to no one in particular, "I've got the Broadwick shift tomorrow." Several men wince. "That's the one with the twins," someone mutters. "Twins, you ask?" Geese says Elias. Two of them, same size, same beady eyes. Nobody's sure which is which. You blink. Why does that matter? They take turns chasing you. One wears you out, the other finishes the job. You exhale slowly. Right, lovely. The man with the bandaged arm pats your shoulder. Bring something shiny. They hate reflections. Noted. As you gather your things, another postman slips you a tiny bottle of vinegar. They hate the smell, he whispers. You sure? No, but it's worth a try. You slip it into your coat anyway, next to your last peppermint and a map of safe doorsteps. You're becoming something else now, something practical, seasoned, lightly bruised. The fire crackles behind you. Outside, a distant honk echoes in the dark. You sigh and smile. The next morning, you rise with the aching bones of a man twice your age and the determination of a fool who hasn't learned his lesson. You lace your boots, pin your last spare brass button to your jacket, and tuck the vinegar bottle securely beside your peppermint stash. A postman's arsenal grows weirder by the week. The Broadwick shift looms. The sun is barely thinking about rising and the fog drapes the streets like a wet bedsheet forgotten on the line. Your route winds up through the estate quarter where streets widen chimneys, wear hats, and the gravel is raked in patterns by gardeners with too much time and not enough imagination. But don't let the grandeur fool you. You're heading into gentry territory now, where the houses are large, the door knockers are lion-shaped, and the geese, trained like sentries but with worse manners. The upper-class goose you quickly discover is a different species entirely. At the first estate, Oakley Manor, you approach the gate and spotted a goose pristine pearlescent, wearing what appears to be a ribbon. Not around its neck, of course. That would be civilized. No, this one has a satin loop tied to its wing. It glides across the lawn like a debutante at a feathered ball, its eyes fixed on you with royal disapproval. You consider your options. There's a servant by the stable's pitchfork in hand watching you silently. "Morning," you nod. He nods back. Deliveries go to the second gate. "Because of the goose. Because of Lady Dorothea," he says flatly. "That's the goose's name." "Of course it is." You follow the gravel around the edge of the lawn, all too aware of Lady Dorothea's shadow behind the hydrangeas. The second gate is blessedly human-friendly. A postbox shaped like a miniature butler accepts your letter with a small click. As you leave, the goose honks once. You feel strangely judged, like you've violated a dress code you didn't know existed. Next, Halberd House. This one is worse, not because of the goose, because of the geese. Two of them, mirror images just as Elias warned you. You nickname them Clarissa and Tabitha. Clarissa circles the fountain. Tabitha watches the front door. One moves, the other stares. Like a feathered chess match in which you are the pawn. The decorative pond does not help. Nor do the statues, one of which has definitely been pecked into submission. You tiptoe through the ornate archway, delivering the letter into a box shaped like a miniature Gothic cathedral. You don't breathe until you're back outside the gate, one hand gripping the fence just to feel real solid iron under your fingers. You check your route. Next up, Pembroke Court. Fewer geese here, at least that's what the notes say. But what they lack in quantity, they make up for in style. This goose, you swear, is posing. It stands on the marble steps of the veranda perfectly still. Its wings folded, neck elongated just so. It's not guarding anything. It's performing. You cough. It doesn't move. You step closer, still nothing. You reach into your satchel, pull out the letter, and place it in the box beside the door. Then the goose hisses. It's not loud, it's theatrical. A hiss of disdain, of critique, as if to say wrong box, wrong boots, wrong vibe. You don't look back. You just descend the stairs like you're on trial. At the next house, Maple Ridge, you find no geese. Just an elaborate porcelain goose figurine by the entry. You think you're safe. You knock. The door opens and a woman in a silk dressing gown says, "Just a moment, dear. I need to fetch the key to the postbox." You nod. Then, from inside the house comes a flurry of honks. You freeze. Is that, oh, that's Daphne, she smiles. She's not fond of uniforms. I see. You're welcome to toss it through the drawing room window. It's safer, really. You do just that. She thanks you as if this were perfectly normal. Historians still argue whether domestic indoor geese were common among the upper classes or just a rare eccentricity among certain households with more shillings than cents. Surviving floor plans and journals from the period list animals, cats, lapdogs, even parrots, but geese, mysteriously absent from official documentation. And yet, the stories persist. Back outside, you pause under the portico of a house called Ashgrove. You recognize the name. This is the estate where Henry W., a postman from Deptford, once reportedly leapt the hedge in full uniform shouting Latin to confuse the birds. The story's probably apocryphal, but after today you understand it on a spiritual level. You deliver the mail without incident until you turn and nearly trip over a ceramic goose statue. You hiss, heart racing, but it doesn't move. Still, you poke it with your umbrella. Just to be sure, it was ceramic. This time, by mid-morning your coat smells faintly of vinegar and fear. You've learned to hold your letters higher, avoid eye contact, and move in slow arcs rather than direct lines, postman tai chi of sorts. The final home on the Gentry route is Bramble Hollow, owned by a former admiral. His goose wears a bell. You swear you're not hallucinating. It walks across the gravel courtyard like it's doing inspections. The bell jingles. The sound is not cheerful, it's chilling. You place the envelope on the stone step, bow your head slightly out of instinct, and slowly, reverently back away. The goose does not give chase. It merely jingles once and turns its back. You don't know whether you've won or failed, only that you're still standing. At the depot that afternoon, you recount the bell-wearing goose. The others lean in. A bell one asks, a warning another whispers, or an invitation, says Elias solemnly. You make a note on the master map. Bramble Hollow goose has accessories. Another day, another shift survived. The geese of the Gentry may be elegant, but their intentions as unpredictable as ever. You drink your tea in silence. A feather falls from your collar. You let it stay. The twilight round begins as it always does, with aching legs, cold fingers, and a quiet hope that this will be the one shift, the magical, mythical shift when no goose notices you. You already know how this ends. The gas lamps sputter to life one by one, casting long, dramatic shadows across cobblestone streets, slick with mist. The last hints of sunlight filter through chimney smoke like diluted treacle. Windows glow softly behind lace curtains. It's the hour when normal people gather indoors, sip tea, or argue gently about toast. But not you. You're out delivering parcels by lamplight, like some doomed character in a Dickensian side story no one reads. Your boots squelch in something. You don't ask what. You just keep walking. Tonight's deliveries are mostly small. A few envelopes. One package wrapped in twine. Nothing too heavy except the mounting sense of unease that comes with the hour. Because this is dusk, and dusk is when they hunt. You turn onto Bellwether Lane, a tight crescent that curves like a scythe and smells of wet plaster and yesterday's soup. A cat watches from a windowsill, unmoving. Somewhere, a child sings off-key. A single wind chime tinkles from a porch too cheerfully for this kind of dread. You reach number 6. The house with the black door. The one with the pond. The one with them. There's something about geese at dusk. Maybe it's the shifting light, or the way their eyes seem to reflect just a little too much. Maybe it's the silence before the honk, the suspense, the drama. You clutch the parcel tighter. It's squishy, possibly jam. You creep up the path. No sign of movement. You place the parcel gently on the doormat, give it a soft pat, and turn. Hiss. From under the hydrangeas, a ghostly blur of feathers lunges. You jump sideways, trip over a garden ornament shaped like a hedgehog, and roll down the step. You land on your side, thankfully cushioned by wet leaves and humility. The goose stands triumphant on the porch, now guarding the jam like its royal treasure. You limp back to the gate, not defeated, just re-evaluating. The next house is no better. Number 8. a small courtyard overgrown with vines and optimism. You open the gate and step through, and immediately step in something warm. You freeze. The smell hits you a second later. Goose droppings. You have walked directly into enemy territory. There's no sign of them yet. But the evidence is clear. You're not alone. You creep forward 1 foot at a time, avoiding the worst of the splatter. You reach the postbox, open it, and clang. Something metal hits the ground behind you. You spin around, heart in your throat. It's just a bucket. But beside the bucket, feathers. Long, pale, drifting feathers. A flap, a shape. It moves with the wind, or against it. Then the honk, low, drawn out. Like a trumpet played by someone disappointed in your life choices. You fumble the letter, shove it into the box, and back away, never turning your back. You walk through the gate without blinking. Only once you're on the street do you exhale. Tonight's theme is delivery horror with a side of slapstick. You check your list, just 3 left. The first 2 go well, relatively. One has a goose statue you triple check before approaching. The other has actual lights on, and a small child who waves from the window, drawing a heart on the fogged glass. Hope apparently still exists. But then comes the last house, Hollowmere Cottage. You've never liked Hollowmere. It's down a narrow path away from the main street. The lamp above its gate flickers intermittently, like it's debating whether to function. A single crow caws from a nearby chimney. You try to pretend that's romantic. It's not. It's just ominous. You approach the fence and see nothing at first. Then you hear the shuffling. Not fast, just persistent, unhurried, like something that knows it doesn't need to rush to ruin your evening. The gate creaks open. You step forward, and there it is. The biggest goose you've ever seen. No ribbon, no bell, no charming name like Mabel or Horatio. Just presence. You stand frozen as it raises its wings slightly. Not in attack yet, but in acknowledgement. As if to say, so, we meet again. You hold out the envelope, your arm trembles. It doesn't move. You take 1 step forward. The goose mirrors you. You stop. It stops. This is chess, now. You place the envelope gently on the stone step. You step back. It steps forward, sniffs the paper, honks once, quietly, then turns and vanishes into the shadows beside the hedge. You walk away. Slowly, evenly, not breathing until your boots hit pavement again. Historians still argue whether Victorian night deliveries were phased out due to cost or danger. Officially, it was efficiency concerns. Unofficially, well, ask anyone who's faced Hollowmere's guardian at twilight. There's a reason the depot calls this shift the goose witching hour. You make your way back to the depot, boots heavier, coat damper, heart still adjusting to its natural rhythm. The lamps now burn steady, the fog thinning. The city exhales. You pass another postman, young, fresh face, still shiny. He nods. Anything out there? You think about it. About the bucket, the feather, the jam, the poop. You smile. Just shadows and feathers. He laughs. You don't. Let him learn. The sun has fully disappeared now, tucked behind a horizon of smokestacks and gaslights, leaving only a purple-gray sky and the faint smell of coal and cabbage. The depot is buzzing when you return, not loudly, just the low murmur of the night shift preparing their routes. Boots being laced, tea being poured, uniform buttons being refastened with prayers. And in one corner, a small but determined crowd is forming. You wander over, instinctively drawn to the scent of frustration and mild union agitation. Elias is there. So is the bandaged man, George, you think. He's chewing on a biscuit like it owes him money. Someone's pinned a handwritten notice to the depot board petition for goose-free delivery zones, support needed. You blink. It's real. You scan the list of names beneath. Some are scratched. Some just signed with a shaky X. But the intent is clear. These postmen have had enough. About time, George mutters. Can't be expected to dodge beaks and deliver birthday cards. Elias nods. We've written the district manager 3 times. Got a reply last week. Said the post office acknowledges the presence of territorial fauna and recommends longer gloves. Gloves, you echo. Wool says George, as if that'll stop a goose's wrath. The room agrees with a collective grunt. You read further proposal increase gate side delivery boxes. Implement noise-based deterrence. Establish clear policy on known aggressive geese. Immediate ban on privately armed poultry. You raise a brow. Armed. Elias waves it off. There was an incident with a goose wearing a bell tied to a fork. It was ceremonial, we think. Historians still argue whether this supposed goose union moment was part of a broader postal movement or just local postmen blowing off steam. Some letters from the 1880s reference protests about rural hazards but never name geese directly. Too ridiculous for the public, perhaps. Too personal for the press. Still, the movement had weight. At the next depot meeting, someone stood up Mr. Farnsworth, the kind of man who reads bylaws for fun and rattled off statistics: 17 minor injuries in a month, 5 uniforms torn, 2 lost satchels, 1 broken cane. Then he paused dramatically, and 0 compensation. That got them clapping. You find yourself nodding. You're not one for speeches, but a bruise on your hip is currently pulsing in support. Someone suggests staging a demonstration. Where, you ask? Outside Parliament. With geese, you joke. George lights up. Yes, we bring them. Let them see. Elias shakes his head. Too risky. What if they turn? A hush. Everyone pictures it, a protest overtaken by honking, flapping chaos. Goose feathers drifting across Westminster Bridge. Politicians diving into the Thames. The plan is shelved for now. Instead, they draft another letter. This one sterner, more official, less emotional, more feathers to facts. It includes witness accounts, injury sketches, and most boldly, a proposal to create a new division of the post office: fauna risk management and control. You chuckle. Catchy. They ask if you want to sign. You do. It's not about the glory. It's about solidarity. About the silent pact among postmen that says, we see your bruises, we hear your honks, we believe. As the crowd thins, someone uncorks a bottle of dubious port. Glasses are filled, toasts are made. To the future, to fewer beak wounds, to indoor deliveries. You drink. It burns slightly, maybe from the alcohol, maybe from the memory of Clarissa's twin lunging from the bushes with tactical accuracy. Elias sets down his glass. You know they tried to train dogs instead of geese. He nods. Didn't work. Dogs liked us too much. You ponder that. It tracks. Geese do not like anything. Not out of hate, out of purpose. You think Parliament will care, you ask? George shrugs. They'll care when a viscount gets nipped. And thus the plan is born: document every incident. Track every honk. Build a case. A few overzealous postmen suggest naming and shaming the worst offenders, drawing cartoons, posting them on the depot wall. Soon, there's a sketch of Lady Dorothea wearing a monocle and clutching a legal brief in her wing. Caption: Objection, sustained peasant. You laugh harder than you have all week. For a moment, the pain fades. The bruises are worth it. The scratches become stories. The humiliation becomes camaraderie. But then the door creaks, and in walks Mr. Hackley, the district supervisor. His mustache trembles with the effort of constantly suppressing emotion. He surveys the room. What's this? He asks, tapping the notice with a finger that's clearly never dodged a beak. Petition, someone mumbles. He reads, grunts, then nods once. We'll send it upstairs. No promises. And do remember, goose injuries are not covered under standard liability. He leaves. You all stare at the door. George whispers, we should have invited a goose in with him. The room erupts in laughter. The port's gone now. The fire has burned low. Most have gone home. You're one of the last to leave. You pause at the board. Run your fingers along the inked names and wonder, will it work? You don't know, but you do know this. Tomorrow you'll walk again. You'll face wings and teeth and indignant honking. And you'll deliver that post anyway. Because you're not just a mailman. You're a goose-dodging legend in the making. Morning again, as always, arrives without asking whether you're ready for it. You wake with the kind of soreness that doesn't ache so much as linger like a bad poem or a very polite hangover. Your boots are still damp. Your coat smells faintly of vinegar victory, and something you hope isn't pickled goose. You set off early today, map in hand because today's the sea route. It winds along the canals, cuts through Baker alleys, then loops around the East Commons before ending at the Old Tanners District. It's long, twisty, and mostly flat. The only real hazard: the goose. Not a goose. The goose. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. It's called the Bristol Chase, though it happened nowhere near Bristol, and no one is entirely sure who started that name. But every postman has heard it told in corners during tea under breath. It begins with a man named Clive. Clive, according to legend, was a veteran postman, broad-shouldered, thick-booted, and the only man in the depot to once bite back. The goose bit him, and Clive, without breaking stride, bit the goose. But even Clive was not prepared for Bartholomew. That's the goose's name, or so the story goes. Bartholomew, the unholy tyrant of Elderick Row, wings like sails, a beak chipped from battle, a honk that echoed off buildings with the gravity of church bells. The story changes depending on who tells it. Some say Bartholomew chased Clive from Elderick Row all the way to the Avon River, a full 2 miles. Others claim it was 7. Some say Clive leapt into a canal and swam to escape. Others claim he rowed a borrowed boat. One version has Clive hopping a horse cart, the goose keeping pace on foot. The most extreme, Clive boarded a departing train only to see Bartholomew appear on the platform, honking triumphantly as the whistle blew. Historians still argue whether the Bristol Chase actually happened. There are no formal records, but someone did sketch a crude diagram of a goose with steam trailing behind it and captioned it, "Bartholomew, bringer of swiftness." That image now hangs above the depot kettle. Revered. You walk Elderick Row, slowly scanning for signs. The road looks quiet, innocent even, but so did Hollowmere before dusk. You reach number 14 and knock gently. No answer, just the rustle of leaves. A distant splash in the canal. You slide the letter through the slot linger for just a second, and that's when you hear it. The clang of a knocked-over bucket. The hiss. You turn blood-cold breath tight. Nothing. Then from behind a rain barrel it emerges. Massive. Majestic. Mean. You whisper Bartholomew. The goose steps forward like it owns the concept of movement. You reach for your umbrella. He speeds up. You run. Your boots slap against the stone. Your satchel bounces like a sack of angry potatoes. You cut through the alley by the bakery, whip past the canal bridge, nearly trip over a chimney sweep. Behind you, the honking. Louder, faster, rhythmically furious. This is not pursuit. This is judgment incarnate. You vault a fence, the old wood scraping your thigh. Bartholomew clears it. You bolt into the yard of number 9, startling a gardener. You hold up your satchel. Postal emergency. The gardener, bless his soul, just yells, "Go left, pond gates open." You follow the command. The gate isn't open. You hit it hard, bounces back, and roll into a patch of ornamental cabbage. Bartholomew stops at the threshold. He honks 3 times, then turns and walks away. Because of course. You lie there panting, arms flung wide, your face pressed against a cabbage that smells oddly like judgment and yesterday's rain. Later, back at the depot, you recount the tale. Someone adds your name beneath a header on the bulletin board, "The Chosen Chased." Your notes are added to the map. Bartholomew. It seems still rains. Over supper, cold beef, weak tea, and shared trauma, new theories emerge. Elias between bites. Maybe it's not just instinct. Maybe they know. George? Like birds in the war, messenger pigeons. These are anti-message geese. Someone suggests that geese have regional loyalties. They guard territories, yes, but maybe they're organized. Maybe Bartholomew patrols. Someone else whispers, "You ever wonder if they can read?" The room goes quiet. Then laughter. Nervous, uncertain, but laughter. You don't laugh. Not tonight. Because as you emptied your satchel earlier, you noticed something. A single sheet of paper. One you didn't deliver. folded neatly, smudged slightly with damp. A note, not yours. It reads, "Return again and see what flies faster, your legs or my fury." B. You show it to no one. Just slide it under your mattress like an unpaid debt. You'll be back on Eldrick Row soon enough, and Bartholomew will know. You spend the next 2 days rerouted, assigned to quieter streets with more cats than geese, and the occasional dog that greets you with a sad wag and no teeth. It's almost restful. Almost. But Bartholomew haunts your dreams. You wake once thinking you've heard a honk only to discover it was your neighbor's tea kettle. You glance out the window anyway just in case. The street is clear. Mostly. Still, the depot has noticed your recent fame. They give you a knowing nod when you walk in. Someone's carved a tiny goose onto your locker. Its eyes are terrifyingly accurate. You'd be offended if it weren't somehow comforting, because you're not alone. You're part of something now, which is why today you're helping test the future a goose-proof gate prototype. You arrive at the testing grounds, a small courtyard borrowed from a sympathetic homeowner with no geese of their own. Yet, the gate is wooden about chest high and features a crank-operated arm that swings open only with a specific pressure and motion. It's been described as simple, elegant, and bird-baffling. A local inventor named Thistleweight built it. Claims it's inspired by the same principle as mousetraps, but you know, friendly. Elias is already there, clipboard in hand. So you say, eyeing the gate. How does it work? You press here, he explains, pointing to a curved lever with a button marked post. That releases a magnetic latch. Door swings open. Swing it shut behind you. Goose can't figure out the reverse. And the test. He grins. We invited one. You turn. There, in a modest crate beneath a tea towel, is Clarissa. Her twin, Tabitha, apparently declined the invitation by attacking the courier. Clarissa is surprisingly calm. For now, she's been known to open latches, Elias says, flipping a page. Perfect candidate. You nod. This is madness. Postal innovation, he corrects. Historians still argue whether Victorian postmen genuinely experimented with anti-goose architecture or if the rumors of goose gates and protective tunnels were urban myths born of desperation. What we do have are photographs of customized mailboxes perched atop tall poles, strange pulleys rigged to deliver letters from a distance, and the occasional architectural sketch labeled simply Post Access, Avian Deterrent Vir 2. You press the button. The gate swings open. You step inside clutching a mock letter in one hand and a biscuit in the other. Always bring the biscuit. Clarissa is released. She steps calmly from the crate, tilts her head, sees you, and sprints. You close the gate behind you. The latch clicks. Clarissa hits the bars like a furious snowball. She honks, flaps, pokes her head through every gap. She circles once, twice, pecks the lever, hisses, steps back, then incredibly sits down. You and Elias both blink. She gave up, you whisper. Don't say it, he mutters. Clarissa, it turns out, has not given up. She's merely conserving energy. She stands again, backs up 3 paces like a charging bull, and lunges right into the gate. Nothing. The gate holds. She honks once, annoyed, then stares at you with the kind of disdain usually reserved for undercooked toast. The test lasts 10 minutes. She doesn't breach. Success. Mostly. Feels too lucky, you mutter. Elias nods. We'll try it with Bartholomew next. You shake your head. He'll bring tools. Still, the test is promising. A few days later, a local estate volunteers to install the first real goose-proof gate. You're assigned to the inaugural run. The house, Kenslow House, is stately but modest. Brick walls ivy a polite lack of drama. You approach the gate, press the latch, and swing it open. No honking, no feathers. You deliver the letter. You walk back out. Nothing attacks. You're elated. Until the housekeeper opens the door holding the letter you just delivered. You left this, she says. You blink. I put it through the slot. She frowns. That's the coal chute. You take the letter, nod graciously, and re-enter through the gate. And this time there's a goose. You don't even know where it came from. It's just there like it teleported in. Standing in the middle of the garden blocking your path. Not Clarissa. Not Bartholomew. A new one. It has swagger. You hesitate. The gate is still open behind you. You could leave, pretend you forgot, toss the letter and run. But you don't. You step forward. The goose tilts its head. You bow slightly. It honks softly, then waddles aside. You deliver the letter. Victory. Back at the depot, you tell the tale. They update the test sheet. Success under mild resistance. Thistle weight beams. The next version of the gate will include sound-dampening hinges and possibly a springboard. Just in case, the depot's mood has shifted lately. Maybe it's the gate, maybe it's the petition, maybe it's the idea that geese can be beaten with clever woodwork and stubbornness. You feel it too. You're not running anymore. You're adapting. You've become goose-aware, goose-smart. And if you squint at your reflection in the depot window, you'd swear your silhouette looks taller, broader, feathered. You shake the thought away. Probably just the coat. December creeps in like a damp ghost wearing a wool scarf. The days grow shorter, the nights longer, and your boots never seem to fully dry. The streets are coated in a thin film of frost and regret. But with the cold comes something far worse than bad socks and stiff fingers: Christmas. Victorian England doesn't do Christmas small. Not anymore. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert have popularized trees, tinsel, and sentimental chaos. And with that comes the great festive flood, the one thing that terrifies even the bravest postman more than Bartholomew: holiday cards. You're not carrying letters today, you're carrying avalanches. The depot is swamped. You see more holly than human faces. The mailbags are swollen with red-bordered greetings and glittery wishes, most of which contain exactly the same message in different handwriting: best wishes of the season from all at number 22. One bag spills open and a flurry of fake snow pours out. You cough, probably inhaling 3 pine-scented angels and a gold foil shepherd. Your uniform is sparkling in ways it was never designed to. You smell faintly of nutmeg and confusion. You're given a helper today. Jeremy, a trainee with round glasses and no known trauma. Yet, you'll handle Brookside, the supervisor says. You glance up. With the goose problem. Brookside always has a goose problem. Jeremy swallows hard. You set out with double the bags and half the hope. Jeremy chatters about stamp varieties, sorting systems, and how excited he is for his first Christmas round. You say nothing. You're scanning for feathers. Brookside begins normally enough. Cheery doors. Children singing. One woman hands you a small mince pie, which you immediately use to bribe a suspicious-looking spaniel. Then comes number 12. You knew it would happen eventually. The gates ajar. The lawn glittering with tinsel and tracks. Goose tracks. Glittery ones. The children here decorate everything, including, it turns out, their goose. You spotted a honking whirlwind of silver ribbon and red baubles strutting across the lawn like it's leading the 12 days of mayhem. Bayham, Jeremy coos. Look at that festive little chap. You stop him. No sudden moves. That's Rudolph. Jeremy laughs. It's a goose. No, that is Rudolph. Capital R. Attacked a caroler last week. You hand Jeremy a bread crust and whisper, toss and run. He doesn't. He walks up confidently and says, "Hello, gorgeous." The goose pauses. You hold your breath, and then it lunges right for the bells on Jeremy's coat pocket. He panics, drops the card, runs into a hedge. Rudolph snatches the bell, honks triumphantly, and struts away. You retrieve the card, tuck it into the door wreath, and help Jeremy out of the shrubbery. Lesson learned. Hopefully. Further up the street, another festive disaster, number 19, has decided to paint their goose red with white trim. It looks like a devil dressed as Santa. You call it Klaus Ferratu. Klaus Ferratu does not charge. Klaus Ferratu waits. You drop the letter into a gingerbread-themed box and back away slowly. The goose's eyes follow you the whole time. You wonder if paint fumes have made it smarter. One home has 6 geese. 6. You consider burning the letter and claiming the house no longer exists. Instead, you send Jeremy up the back lane with a diversionary trail of oatcakes. It works, kind of. The geese follow him. You deliver the cards. He returns breathless, holding only 3 fingers aloft. You okay, you ask. They got my glove, he whispers. Historians still argue whether the Christmas rush was the most dangerous time for Victorian postmen or merely the busiest. Statistically, injuries spiked during December's slippery steps, falling icicles. Children throwing things. But the goose factor largely omitted from official records. Yet countless personal letters mention honking interruptions and festive poultry troubles. One even notes attacked by angel-winged fowl, not metaphorical. At number 7, a child opens the door. You smile. She screams, "Mum, the postman, get the goose leash." You drop the bundle of cards and sprint. Behind you, a hallway honk. At number 22, a family has rigged a sleigh to their goose. It's towing toy soldiers. Is that safe, you ask? Emotionally, no, the father says, physically unclear. At the end of the round, you and Jeremy collapse on a bench covered in glitter breadcrumbs and holiday despair. Jeremy shudders. That red one, the way it moved. That was Klausferatu. He nods. I'll never love Christmas again. You hand him a peppermint. He doesn't take it, just stares into the distance. You look down at your uniform, spangled, stained, slightly torn. One shoulder smells like cinnamon. One shin bleeds lightly. You've done good work. Because you didn't just deliver cards, you delivered hope, or at least aggressively festive rectangles of hope. And the geese, they gave you their best. You survived anyway. As you stand to head back to the depot, you feel something in your boot. A single bell. Rudolph's trophy. You place it in your coat pocket. A warning, a badge, a souvenir. Evening descends with that peculiar winter hush, the kind where every chimney puff hangs in the air like a thought half-formed, and the cobblestones glisten not with moisture but memory. Your legs ache in that bone-deep way they only do after 12 miles of goose dodging, in full Victorian regalia. But tonight, there's something different waiting for you back at the depot. A box. Not just any box, a worn wooden chest no bigger than a bread crate with brass hinges and initials carved on top. HMS, not a ship. A man, you remember him. Harold Montague Sims. Postman, legend, goose survivor. He retired before you joined the service, but his tales echo through every muddy boot print and every biscuit ration. He was the one who wore shin guards under his trousers and carried 2 umbrellas, one for the rain and one for the rage. Apparently, he kept a journal, and someone just donated it. Inside the box are 10 battered notebooks, the edges frayed like a chewed epilogue. The depot has them out on the table surrounding them like archaeologists discovering a forgotten empire of irritation and pecking. You're allowed to hold one. You open the cover to a page marked Spring 1876, March 4th. Bitten twice before tea. Both knees. Geese remain unimpressed by my yelling. You flip forward. April 17th. Attempted diplomacy with stale biscuits. No success. Possible miscommunication in offering. One goose threw it back. Jeremy leans over your shoulder. Is it all like that? You nod. Worse. Some pages are diagrams. Goose trajectories, defense postures, estimated wingspans. Others include poetry. Feathers in moonlight. Boots in mud. Heart in my throat. Morning post again. You snort. Jeremy looks genuinely moved. One entry from May reads, delivered a letter to number 12. Goose cornered me. Recited the Lord's Prayer. Survived. Coincidence. Another features a sketch of a goose with 3 question marks above its head. Below, Sims writes, this one's planning something. Historians still argue whether these journals were entirely factual or written with a wink and an ink-smudged grin. But what's undeniable is the emotion, the vivid, bedraggled truth of living life one honk at a time. You stay late flipping pages. The ink smells faintly of mildew and old tea, and the words, like they were written yesterday. There's one entry you linger over. It's dated midwinter, December 23rd. Brought a card to Widow Milligan. Snow knee-deep. Goose on porch wore a ribbon. Did not attack, just watched. Nodded maybe. Or maybe the wind. Left the card. Said Merry Christmas. Walked away. Felt seen. Like it knew. You stare at it for a long moment, then carefully close the notebook. Later, as you shoulder your satchel for the final delivery run of the day, someone hands you a wrapped parcel, brown paper, twine, a label to the current bearer of the satchel. From one who once carried it. You open it on the stoop outside. Inside, a pair of reinforced shin guards, polished, heavy, worn at the edges but strong. You run a hand over them slowly. They fit. You wear them out on the next block. It's quiet, for now. But the moment you reach Willow Lane, you hear it a single solitary honk. You turn slowly. A goose. Young, probably new to the beat. It stares at you. You stare back. There is a moment. A long one. Then it waddles away. Not chased, not beaten. Just acknowledged. You walk on. That night, back at the depot, you leave a note on Sims's box. Still here, still walking, still delivering, and yes, the shin guards worked. Thank you. The depot is quieter now. The holiday rush has passed, but the geese, of course, remain. Always watching. Always honking. And you've begun to understand them. Not like a zoologist. Not like a friend. Like a fellow soldier in an absurd feathery war no one outside these streets would ever take seriously. You walk the last round with the same careful steps you did on your first day, only now your eyes are sharper, your reflexes honed, and your satchel rides perfectly on your shoulder. You pass number 6, the one with the painted goose. She's on the porch again, wearing tinsel. She doesn't move. You tip your hat. She fluffs her feathers, gives one gentle honk, and turns inside. Progress. At the depot, Jeremy asks if the stories in the journal were true. All of them, you say. Even the one about Bartholomew outrunning a cart, especially that one. He nods solemnly, then grins. I started keeping my own notes. He holds up a small red notebook. Embossed in gold, the pecking order. You nod. File a copy when it's full. Because one day, someone else will carry the satchel. Someone fresh, full of hope and unbitten shins. And they'll need to know. They'll need to remember. Because the geese, they never forget. Retirement doesn't come with a parade. There's no gold pocket watch, no final honkless shift through flowered lanes. Just tea, a few pats on the back, and a surprising amount of cake. The depot is quieter now. You sit at the long bench near the window, sipping lukewarm Earl Grey, while watching the next generation lace their boots and check their satchels. Jeremy is among them now, officially Goose certified, whatever that means. You're no longer on the board rotation. No more pre-dawn trudges through frost-bitten alleys or moonlit mad dashes across goose-infested estates. Your coat hangs in your locker. The last peppermint still rattles in your pocket. A keepsake. Someone's added your name to the ledger. Next to it, a small feather inked in brown. You smile. A postman's knighthood. You walk home slowly past the same streets you once ruled in rubber soles and biscuit diplomacy. The city feels different when you're not hurrying, not chasing a deadline, just wandering. You turn onto a familiar street. Bridgeton Terrace. You pause at the fence, and there they are, not the same ones, not Clarissa, nor Bartholomew, nor even Closferatu. These are new geese, younger, glossier, but with that same twitch in their wings, that same ancient suspicion in their eyes. One of them watches you. You nod. A slow, respectful nod. The goose blinks and looks away. That right there is your victory. You reach your door just as the sun begins to set. The light softens, smears the edges of the buildings like watercolors and tea. Your home smells like old paper and warm bread. You pour a cup. Sit near the fireplace. Take out your journal. You write, "Today I wasn't chased. Today I was seen and left alone." Not many can say that. You flip through your old notes, scrawled lists of safe hedges, bribery ratios, sketches of the legendary Bartholomew's talon pattern. And there, tucked between the pages, a letter. Not one you remember writing, not addressed. Just 2 words. You survived. No signature, but you know who wrote it. You fall asleep in your chair with a blanket over your knees and that letter resting on your chest. Somewhere beyond the window, a goose honks softly. Not a threat, not a warning, just acknowledgement. The fire crackles gently now, its light flickering over old boots and frayed hems. The satchel hangs quietly on the coat peg, a little faded, a little bent, but still strong. You lean back, eyes soft as the room around you slows. Out on the street, the last gas lamps flicker to life. Their glow spills across empty walkways, untouched hedges, and the occasional quiet rustle of feathers passing through the mist. There are no urgent knocks, no flapping wings, only stillness. You shift deeper into the chair, the warmth of the tea lingering like a whisper in your hands. Your breath moves slowly now, gently, evenly. The notes in your journal blur slightly as your eyes drift closed, half-read tales of triumph and ridiculous beaked disasters. You smile just a little as your muscles soften. The fire settles. Your heartbeat quiets. You're not walking anymore, not scanning the shadows, not clutching crumbs or flinching at rustles. You've done your shift, passed the torch, laughed and limped through every ridiculous noble mile. Let the new postman carry it now. You rest knowing somewhere in the city, a young trainee with fresh socks and terrible instincts is facing his first goose and learning what it means to stand his ground. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'll be the one nodding at the next. The street is still. The wind hums faintly against the shutters. And somewhere in the far distance, a goose honks softly in the dark. Not as a threat, not as a curse, but as a lullaby. Sleep now. You've earned it.